Hello and welcome to Blender 102, week number 5, where we begin construction on the head of our character, which, of course, when I first transition over to Blender, sometimes it doesn't want to capture my Shift key. Now, the way we're going to be handling this for the next 2 weeks, so starting tonight and then tomorrow, well, next week, same class, different time, of course, we are going to be modeling out primary features of the head first. So we're going to take care of the mouth, we're going to take care of the eyes, the nose, and if we have time, we'll take care of the ears. And then in next week's class, we'll connect all of this together with some flesh to make a head, and connect that back over to the body. And then, time permitted, we'll add some hair pieces. So if we don't have time, then you'll at least have a full body. But you will have seen so many modeling tools where if you wanted to take a stab, a poke at making some hair, you'll have everything you need to really do that. So let's go ahead and just get rolling, provided there are no questions about last week's class or assignment, or make sure everybody's still kind of doing relatively well. How is everybody doing tonight? You guys all doing okay? For those of you who are following and listening over inside of BuzzNet, how you guys doing tonight? Are you as excited to be here as I am? Well, awesome. So let's go ahead and get rolling. The first thing I want to start off with is the mouth of our character. Now, there is no right or wrong with where you start when building a head. I've started in all kinds of different places over the years. I've started with eyes, nose. I don't think I've ever started with an ear, to be perfectly honest. Usually for me, it's going to be the eyes, the nose, or the mouth as a primary feature that I begin with. But tonight, we're going to begin with the mouth. So I'm going to move my 3D cursor here to the middle of the mouth, or close to it. Let me press the N key, and I'll go ahead and turn on screencast keys so I don't forget to do that later. And also, in my coordinates for the 3D cursor, which are floating over here, I'm going to take X and set that to 0 to put that right on the center line. Then let's switch over to the side view, and we'll place this right at the middle of the lip. So that'll work. Next, I'm going to hit Shift A, or you can go to the Add menu. And you need to, actually, before you do this, make sure that you are in edit mode. So let's go ahead and just hit Tab. So make sure that you can see your components of the model. Shift A, and we're going to add in a plane. So this great big plane appears right here at the center line, which is great. Now, we need to shrink this down. Obviously, this plane is a little huge, so I'll just hit S, scale this down. Rotate this around. And I'm going to move it so that it kind of runs from the inside point of the lip to the outside point of the lip. I'm not going to worry about this curvature just yet. So we'll scale it up a little. Move. Just a little more scaling. So somewhere right about here, give or take. And if we go to our front view, this is what this looks like. Now, I want to use the fact that we have clipping turned on to our advantage, so I'm going to hit G and just drag this out to the edge, and as soon as I do that and click, then clipping is going to jump in and kind of help me out here. Now understand, these are hand-drawn image planes. They are very close for hand-drawn image planes, but expect to see some discrepancy between what you see in the front and what you see in the side. And what we're going to do is outline the shape of the lips very carefully using a very little amount of geometry. So let me go ahead and hide out my smooth. So I'll just turn off the smooth modifier. And I'll go to X-ray mode by tapping the Z key. And you can get kind of a solid idea of what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of outlining these primary shapes of the lips like so. Now that's what it looks like in the front view. Let's also jump over to the side view, and we can do the same. It's pretty close. Now, don't be afraid to occasionally take a look at this in perspective. And right now it's just a couple of faces, so it's not going to be all that magnificent. And what we'll do from here is switch over to edges, and we'll just do a couple of extrusions. So I'm going to wiggle this just a little bit, so move it up slightly. Hit E for extrude and pull this about halfway down the lips, and then immediately switch over to vertices. Now I'm doing a couple of things here. I am outlining the shape of the lips, as you can see. I'm keeping it very simple as I do that. But also, notice these edges. We're vertical at the center, and as we're moving away, we're starting to become gradually more horizontal. That's an important feature to keep in mind because we're going to be using that to make this shape wrap around and then form the lower lip here in just a little bit. Now, let's take a look and see how this looks in the side view. Obviously, this is going to need to be pulled back quite a ways, and let's go ahead and go over to transparent view. We'll switch over to vertices and handle each one of these vertices individually to outline our shape. Because what you're doing, whenever you're modeling a face, or any part of the body for that matter, it becomes more important on a face to make sure things look nice and neat, is you want to get an idea of where a single point exists in the front view, and then try to interpolate where that same point exists in the side view. Because if you have it in the same position on both views, then it's probably exactly where that vertex needs to be for the 3D model. That said, I'll mention this early, and then as you work, you'll get more and more used to it. Don't let yourself fall into the easy trap of just working in the front and side views and nothing else. Every so often, take some time to look in perspective and rotate around. If you don't do that, you will find that a lot of your models will end up looking very squarish. Like say at the temples, and you may have even seen these. I know I've seen a few works in progress over at 3D Buzz where people are modeling their first humanoid model. And right around the cheeks, and especially in the temple area, you end up with a lot of kind of angular shapes where their head looks kind of like a rounded box when viewed from above. And that's because in a lot of cases, folks just get carried away following along in the front view and the side view and not stopping to consider that occasionally it's a good idea to rotate around this and make sure it's still looking good in 3D. So definitely do that. Now I'm almost done here. Again, I'm keeping my geometry very, very low. Let's switch back over to edges, and I'll extrude out here toward the corner of the mouth. Like so. Then jump over here to the side view, and I'll just slide these back and make sure they line up over here as well. And already that looks like a very simplified upper lip. Now, for those of you who are following along with me tonight, I would ask if you would please go ahead and click on your participate button over inside of BuzzNet so I can tell who's actually going to be trying to follow along with me when I do ready checks. The fewer of you who do this, the faster I will probably end up going. Now that said, if you're having a hard time keeping up for any reason, please note that Tuesday's class is already up for streaming, so if you need to just jump over there and start watching that where you can pause at will, that's totally cool with me. But I'd like to go ahead and give an early ready check for those of you who are following to get up to this point. Okay, so we have that working. Let's jump back over to the front view, and now I want to begin on the lower lip. Now, it may be tempting to create, and I'm going to wiggle this a little bit, it may be tempting to create the lower lip just by grabbing this edge here and just extruding that out and across. That's certainly one way to work, but I don't recommend it. I find that trying to wrap things around is just more of a pain. You're constantly having to stop to pull stuff forward. What I like to do, and maybe this is just personal preference, is I'll take this first lower edge and just extrude it out just a tiny little bit like so. Adjust my vertices. Then watch this. We'll go back over to edges and I'll just extrude this out once and shape it. So maybe something kind of like that. Let's go over to the side view. And obviously these verts need to be kind of pulled back and adjusted slightly. And now I can grab this face that kind of is in the middle here, just hit X and delete out faces. And I have a separate piece of geometry all prepared to start creating the lower lip. So it's like 2 extrusions, then just delete the middle extrusion. Very easy trick. I use that a lot. Switch over to edges. Tap E to extrude. Switch over to vertices. And again, you're just shaping the lower lip in the front view, and then once again in the side view. Ignore the fact that you're missing some curvature here. We're going to be putting an extra edge in here to add curvature to the entire lip surface. So it's early to worry about that. Finally, tap E one more time, go to vertices. We'll just kind of line these up like so. Jump back here to the side view and arrange accordingly. Now, there is a gap here between these two pieces, and what I want to do to close that is grab this upper edge and this lower edge and just tap F, and now we have a complete lip assembly. It's basic, it's not perfect by any means, and as a matter of fact, it could probably even use a little bit of tweaking, but it's getting the point across, and that's what's important. So let's give another ready check for people to get to this point. And it looks like I ran into a problem of reversing my pauses. So I'm going to try my very best here to get everybody back to where we left off before the pause. And so my apologies to those of you who are following along with this on a video. Let me jump over to edges, and here's what I'm going to do, just as kind of a safety measure. I'm going to dissolve these edges completely along with their vertices and get us all the way back to this point. And really quickly, I'm just going to model my way back out. So what we did to get the shape of the lips was to hit Control R and drop those in, drop just one edge in, and then go to the side view, because that's where we have to do most of our moving anyway. We'll pull out. Let me switch over to vertices, pull this a little bit forward, pull these guys a little bit forward, and these like so. And we get it really close. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. Now me, I like to have some extra detail around my lips, so if we grab this edge loop that goes around the inside of the lips, we can now hit W and just bevel that and split that off. And in the front view, this is going to look like it lines up pretty well, almost no matter where we put it. So really the side view becomes kind of our most important customer at this point. And so we can just start grabbing these edges and lining things up. Also, from the front view, pay close attention to your corners so that vertices don't get too tangled, and if they seem like they are, just take a moment and untangle them. It's okay if later on vertices kind of start to overlap one another slightly, but it's so early and there's so little detail in here, you want to keep that sort of overlappage to a real minimum. Okay, so with that, we've got a nice pair of lips, both in smooth and in our original form. So let's get away from this for just a moment and let's take a look at creating some eyes. Now, there are a few ways that I like to create eyes depending on which application I'm in. Sometimes I'll draw a polygon that goes around an eye. But in this case, let's do something similar to what we did with the mouth. I'm going to place my 3D cursor right on top of the eyelid, like so. Then go to the side view and place the cursor once again right on top of the eyelid, about like so. I'll hit Shift A and add in a plane. Now, I need to scale this plane down, and clipping is going to get in the way. So temporarily deactivate clipping, scale this plane down so you have two separate planes on either side of the mirror, and then turn clipping back on. And that'll solve that problem. Now we'll come over here back to the front view. Actually, let's go to the side view, because what I want to do is first scale this a little bit more and then rotate it about like so, so it's slanted forward just a little bit. And then in the front view, I'll turn off smooth, switch over to vertices, and just start lining this up with the top of the eyelid. Now, I am keeping this shape very, very simple. It's very easy, I believe, at this stage to get carried away and make a shape that just has a whole lot of faces going around the eye and lines up absolutely perfectly. I would advise against doing that right now because you're probably creating a lot of extra detail that you don't need. So we're going to make a very general outline of the eye. Let's grab these two vertices here at the outer edge, switch to the side view, and these look like they can be pulled back slightly, while these vertices look like they could be pulled forward slightly. Switch back over to edges, and I'll do one extrusion, like so. Go to the side view, slide that back, and then in the front view, I'm going to grab vertices and kind of tilt that outward a little more, just like the mouth. If you think about it, this is really exactly what we did with the mouth. Back over on edges, I'll extrude again, go to the side view, slide back, switch over to vertices, and slide this vertex back slightly. I want to see these kind of start to lean backwards here in the side view as well. But I also want to see these get thinner when viewed from the front. Because if you think about it, by the time you make it to like your temple in this area, the surface of the skin is almost pointed straight out to the side. So we're going to try to keep things very tight here, so it'll be easier to make that transition in the skin. And here we are in perspective view. Okay. Now, let's go back here to the inside edges, grab edge, and we'll do two extrusions. Here's one extrusion, and back in the side view, it's a little difficult to tell where this is going to go. If you follow the curvature of the drawing, you can kind of see where the edges would meet somewhere near a tear duct. And this is true in photos of human beings as well, but you have to kind of infer it. It's one of those jobs you'll have as a modeler. You'll do a lot of interpolation of what you see. So let's grab this edge and we'll slide it back slightly. So it's starting to wrap around the eye. And then here we'll extrude again, switch over to vertices, and pull these in really snug to one another. And make that edge a little more horizontal, make this edge a little more horizontal, like so. Let's grab these two vertices and go to the side view, and we can pull these back as well. So we're starting to get back toward the corner of the eye. And let's give a quick ready check for those of you who would like to catch up. Okay, continuing on. So we have these two little arcs that go up and over the eyes. Now we need to make the same thing underneath. Now I like to do this the same way I do the mouth. So I'll grab this central edge here at the lower part, just extrude this straight down, immediately switch over to vertices and line these up in the front view. Go to the side view and do the same thing. And it looks like here we just kind of need to move them backwards just a little bit. Back to edges, extrude out slightly. And now you can grab this face here in the middle, hit X, and just delete that face altogether. Now if we go to edges, we'll extrude once, clean up our vertices here, go to the side view. These can both be moved backwards, out to here, pull back slightly. Edges again, extrude out again. Switch to vertices, we'll get these close. Keep this nice and tight. Grab edges here, and just hit F. And now we can take a minute and just clean these up. Okay, so that's looking pretty good, I think. Now, Back over in the front view, let's pull this out a little bit, switch over to edges, and we'll do a couple more extrusions. So extrude once, switch to vertices, clean up a little bit, and I'm going to tweak a few vertices around here. These can start to go backwards, back toward the corner of the eye. We'll extrude these out. And instead of just connecting things straight up, let's first make sure we fix these in the side view. So these need to go back toward the corner of the eye as well. And these can probably start to kind of split the difference. Let me not extrude there by accident. Oh, that may be a little bit extreme. And take a look here in perspective and you can see kind of how extreme that is. Ooh, it looks like I may have extruded there and not meant to. So let me grab this face and actually hit X and delete that face. Grab these vertices and move those instead of extrude them. Yeah, it looks like I hit E instead of G without meaning to. There we go. Now in the front view, what I'm going to do is just kind of outline the shape of the tear duct at the corner of the eye. And I can do that by just hitting E. There's a couple of ways to do this. You could extrude it manually, or you could just use Control, and I'm using right mouse because I flipped Blender's kind of, to me, bass-ackwards use of right and mouse button. Let's grab these two and just hit F, so we close that up, and now just start closing up and rearranging vertices. So we get a nice flowing shape for the tear duct, and we can keep the faces nice and tight over here as well. And come over here to the side view, and we can't see much, so let's just go out here to perspective, and we'll clean all this up manually. So this face could slide backwards, so could, not that one, but this one here, kind of keep things sort of flat to the front of the face. And there we go. So I have two concentric edge loops forming this nice loop of edges that go around the eye. Let's go ahead and do another ready check for people to catch up to this point. Okay, now before we go too much further with the eyes, it would be a good idea to make sure that things are lining up with an eyeball. Now this is kind of a tricky part, because different types of characters will have different types of eyes. Some CG characters that I've created have perfectly spherical eyes, others have the more humanoid style where the eye kind of tapers as you come around to the cornea, or you get those kind of oval or eggplant shaped eyes. It just depends on a whole lot of factors. What we're going to do is simulate perfectly spherical eyes for a start, and if we wanted to add anything like, you know, the corneal bump on the front of the eye, we could do that later if we so desired. But for now, we're going to keep things very, very simple. So get out of edit mode and go back to object mode by hitting the tab key. And then I'm going to go to the front view and place the 3D cursor pretty much right where I want an iris to be, or the pupil, like the center of the eye. Get it close. Then in the side view, well, actually that lines up pretty closely. We can go right with that. Now let's hit Shift-A, Mesh, and create a UV sphere. Now UV spheres are handy for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons I like them, oh cool, look, our head's done, that's perfect. We'll just go with a disco ball head. Alright, we can take this and scale it down. And another thing I like to do is to rotate this forward. So if we go to the side view and just hit R and Control, we can rotate this 90 degrees forward and then move it straight back so it kind of lines up with the drawing, and it gives us a clear impression of how the eye would be placed. You can actually use those faces to kind of simulate an iris and a pupil and get an idea of how this eye should be placed in the skull. Now I'm going to scale this up a little bit and slide it back a little further. Kind of let's not do that. Let's cross-reference with the side view. So I can use the drawing to figure out if I'm placing this properly. Might be a little bit big. Let's try a little bit smaller. And that looks pretty good. Now the reason we do this is so that when I'm happy I can just hit smooth, but then I can go back to my original object, go back into edit mode, and then place these vertices right above the surface of that sphere. Now if you get a little bit of protrusion, say with these edges, if you see them kind of poking through the body of the sphere, don't be alarmed by that. That's perfectly natural. But really all I'm worried about are these innermost vertices and making sure that they get pretty snug right up against the inside of the sphere. They do not have to be sitting right on the surface. In fact, if they're not, it'll be easier later on for me to add some thickness to the eyelid. So just a little bit of a gap. And right about here, we are happy. So let's give another quick ready check for those who have just gotten their sphere in. Alright, so now we've got our very first edge loop around the eye. It's not a bad idea to check and see what that looks like when smoothed, but it's a little early to make decisions based on that. So let's do things, I guess, a little bit differently than I did in the previous class. What I'm going to do is grab this inner edge loop and extrude it, but then slide it straight back. And this will allow me to create some thickness that can go straight into the eye. Notice I'm not even really worried too much about the image planes right now. I'm just kind of spreading these out and getting a nice gap with that new surface that I created that goes right back into the eye itself. Also, keep in mind that I'll probably have to take these new edges here, because I slid those straight back. I'll have to kind of pull those inward just a little bit. Now it's a little hard to see what I'm doing, so let me grab this sphere. I'll just hit H and hide it. Come back out here, and all I'm doing, you see how, like this vertex here, see how I just went straight back from the corner of the eye? I don't want that. I kind of want there to be a little bit of an angle inward from that. Same with the inside corner of the eye as well. Now for a tear duct, you see how I've got an edge, and an edge, kind of forming like a trapezoidal shape? A neat trick for that is to just grab edges here and here, and just go ahead and fill those in. It just gives you a nice kind of recessed area for a tear duct that you can play with. And you can see that right there. Even so far as maybe grabbing this one vertex and pulling that out a little bit and getting a little lump at the corner of the eye. Now if you hit Alt-H, once you get out to object mode, you can bring that sphere back and see how this rests right on the surface. It may be pretty good and it may not be. Make sure that you pull out and get a nice little gap between your eyeball, like so. But there's one more thing we can do to really drive this home, and it may be a tiny little bit early for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. You guys seem to be following along really well. We can grab this outermost edge that sits just outside the eye and bevel it. And let's pull the percentage down on the bevel, and we get some nice creasing all the way around our eyelid. So you can see how that works. Okay. So now I'm going to grab this outermost ring of edges, or loop of edges, excuse me. I'm going to hit E to extrude, and then immediately right-click and scale out uniformly. And it'll create some nice detail that's spread out from the original. Let's go into the front view. And actually, I'm going to take my eye over here in object mode and just hit H to hide that. We don't really need to see it. Let's go into wireframe view and go back into edit mode and switch over to vertices. And we can start to spread these out. Now, as you get toward the corners of the eye, both the inner and the outer corners, you'll find that it's generally a good idea to keep your edges very tight together and only let them spread out as you get toward the center of the eye. Also, watch your topology and try to make sure that you have a nice radiating topology that is moving out. Just a second. There we go. That is moving out at nice angles. So here, you see how this edge goes straight down? We probably don't want that. We probably want that to kind of nicely radiate outward away from the center of the eye. Here we are at the corner of the eye, so we'll keep things nice and snug again. And here it looks like we can pull this out and start to form a little bit of the eyebrow. Pull this out to kind of form the cheek a little more cleanly. Okay, and I think it's another good time for a quick ready check. Alright, now we can do another edge surrounding the eyes. Let's jump out to the front view, grab the eye, hit H one more time, make sure we grab our geometry and enter edit mode again. I'll grab this outermost edge loop, and I'll extrude, right click, and then scale out uniformly once again. And then start adjusting my vertices. And let me hide out the smooth, because again, it'll just make things easier to kind of see what's going on. Make sure my topology radiates nicely. Keep things snug at the corners once again. And then double check the side view. Okay, so at this point from the front view, we've got a couple of nice rings that are starting to surround the eyes. Probably be a good idea to take these points at the corner of the eye and start to pull them forward. We're going to need some detail to come forward to start to build the nose, so we don't need those to sink too far back in. We got a perspective to make that a little easier to visualize. So now what we want to do is start to build out the shape that will eventually become the nose. Kind of verify a couple of things in the front view real quick. I feel like these edges out here could be pulled out just a little bit farther. Aside from that, I think that's all looking pretty good. Okay. And then maybe some adjustment we probably start to pull some of this detail in so it lined up a little more cleanly with my drawing. So let me grab edges, grab here and here. Pull those in, pull these in, pull these in, clean this up a little bit. Okay, so that looks a lot better. Now let's switch over to edges, and I'm going to grab these two edges. I'm kind of tempted to grab this third one too. In fact, I could go all the way down to 4, but let's keep it simple for now. So I'll grab these 3 edges and extrude, and I'm going to slam these all the way into the center and utilize clipping to turn them into a shape about like so. Now, as soon as I've done that, I need to go straight over to the side view and pull these forward, switch over to vertices, and clean these vertices up to kind of start to outline the bridge of the nose right where it connects between the eyes, which I think is called the coelom, but... Oh, and look what I did again. I hit E instead of G. Let me undo that. That's horrible. Jump back over to the side view and hit G instead of E. Okay. Once you have that, take a moment and start kind of averaging out the vertices that lead out to that. So let's go back out here to perspective, and we can grab some of these vertices here at the corner of the eye and just start pulling them forward. As a matter of fact, proportional editing might not hurt to kind of help that become a little easier to pull off, I guess. But then we can also kind of widen them out a little bit. Leave yourself plenty of room here in this new extrusion of edges, because we're going to have to add some more detail into that. If you go to the side view and check your smooth right now, you'll see your smooth mesh does not make it out to the level of the nose. You shouldn't be expecting it to at this point, because we don't have a whole lot of vertical detail to help draw that shape in. But it is the perfect time to see if everybody's kind of ready. Actually, as a matter of fact, we are just a little bit shy of an hour of actual class time by just a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and give us a 10-minute break at this point. Listen to me very closely, though. I'm also going to restart BuzzNet just in case. I think BuzzNet's working fine. I just don't think a lot of people are talking in there right now. But I have had a couple of people who have told me they think that the chat is not working. So I am going to create a brand new Blender 101 classroom inside of BuzzNet, and all of you who are following along need to go ahead and join that. So we'll be doing that on the break as well. So that'll wrap up this video. Thanks.